I would like to open the second meeting of the month of the Port of Coupeville Board of Commissioners for Wednesday, August 23rd,
Right.
and ask that you stand and offer the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
and one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty
and
and
justice for
justice
all.
for all.
And I will begin the roll call today by letting you know that I'm David Day and I'm the Commissioner for District 1.
And I'm John Mashasik. I'm here attending today for District 2.
John Callahan with 2 L's, attending from District 3.
All right. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda for today?
I have one suggestion. I read the information that Chris sent out on the Endurus Premium. It was pretty complete, and I have no further questions about this. And I would recommend we take it off the agenda, save time.
Commissioner Mashasik, do you want to comment on that?
Well, I've been going back and forth with Chris about ways to, manage that. And I don't know if Chris would want to report some of the conversations that are emails that I've had with him about, changing the premium was not an option, things like that.
Okay, well, we'll leave it on and try to keep it short. Anything else? Changes.
Same thing in the same area. We have a letter from a person who is apparently banned for life. And the letter was written to the commissioners. And there's nothing on the agenda right now on how we're going to respond to that. I think we need to, and that was done some time ago. So
yeah, I was waiting for Chris to be at a meeting again before we brought that up, and it is not on the agenda. Would you like to add that to the agenda?
I would.
You can. Before you do, that's a staff issue, and I've already discussed it with staff, and we are going to. I'm going to respond back to him today, and allow him to come back. But that's a staff issue that I see, and he did send it to you guys. I understand, but managing the wharf, managing the customers, that's typically a staff task.
I disagree with the response. I agree that you have to manage it, but the letter was written to the commissioners. Therefore, we need to respond.
Well, okay. So if someone writes you about a dog that bit another dog, you're going to take care of it and not staff?
If somebody writes, yeah, I mean, what you're saying is that no matter what people write to the commissioners, that you're supposed to respond to that on behalf of the commissioners. So let me ask you this. What happens if somebody's complaining about you?
That's different. There's a chain of command. You have one employee, and that's the executive director. So if someone has a complaint against the executive director, they should go to you. And just let you know, Commissioner Callahan, I would never answer for the board. I would just simply answer that person back and keep the board informed and copy them.
Nonetheless, the letter was written to the commissioners, and I think we need to respond. Let me put your mind at ease, by the way. I'm not suggesting we take over your authority, but we have to be in the loop.
Absolutely, I agree with you, and I would keep you in the loop on what we decide and communicate. I do agree with you.
So
what I'm wondering, maybe
I will ask if we want this as a point on the agenda.
I would like to have it on the agenda to clear it up.
And I would agree with you. And so we'll put it on as old business 7.6. How's that?
It probably should be under new business 8.4.
Yeah. New business.
All right, new business 8.4.
I'll make it an action item. And how would you like this titled?
Response to whatever the guy's name letter is.
I kind of see it as like almost like a general policy kind of decision.
Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely.
Or, no, okay,
No.
maybe that's why we can just discuss it.
yeah,
Anything else that you'd like added or subtracted from the agenda?
I'll get you his name later. Okay, thank you.
Let's move then to commissioner action and the approval of the vouchers for this time period. Does anybody have them in front of them?
I've got the AP report and I've got the voucher approval document. Do you want me to make a motion to approve?
Make a
voucher
motion and
approval?
see if we have any comments or questions.
I have no comments.
I don't either on the AP.
Well, let's make a motion then and we'll,
You want me to read it?
sure.
I make a motion that we approve the voucher approval document dated 8/23/2023 for voucher numbers 23-0832 through 23-0839 for a total of $7,567.24. Payroll voucher of EFT 0804 for $13,896.41, and the electronic voucher EFT 0805 is for an IRS voucher for $3,613.60 for a total amount on the voucher approval document of $25,077.25. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Is there any discussion? I have one question, and that's such a small amount for the architectural firm. $4.84.
They sent an updated invoice right after we had paid at the beginning of the month. So it is definitely the only amount owed. And I believe that that's the final for that part.
And then I also have a question on the Thompson Environmental. Is that the final, will that be the final billing for Mr. Thompson?
That part, I don't know. That would have to come from Chris and Mary. 'Cause I'm
So unless he gets pulled in for something else on the pile and cap project, we should be good. The eelgrass staking was the last on his list of things to do, but I can't promise you it'll be his last. If Kelly needs to pull him in for something, then it'll be more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from anyone?
Not here.
All in favor of approving the vouchers as submitted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to the first opportunity for public comment. It's a time set aside for members of the public to speak to the board. If there's anyone that would like to speak to the board, please give us your name, where you live, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the board?
Nope. There's no one online and no one here that would like to speak.
All right, that takes us to old business and a wharf tank update at 7.1.
Yep. So wharf fuel tank update. So all contracts, all paperwork, and Mary, please chime in if I missed something for the board, have been signed. So the check boxes have been checked. The next step here is to have a pre-construction walkthrough. They are going through vacations on their end. One of their owners, or President Kyle, is coming back from vacation. So as soon as we can get a date with our engineer and design, Thomas Pressler, and Kyle and his team from Ultra Tanks, we'll have our pre-construction meeting. At that point, we'll have a timeline of material purchases, And when they can complete the project, we'll discuss timing. At that point, Mary will issue a notice to proceed. So you guys should hopefully be getting an email at some point at the end of next week. We hope that will have a timeline associated with it and, you know, a completion date. We want to be sensitive of the projects around it. And obviously we don't want this to start until our high season is over. So with that, that's all we have for the fuel
Do
tanks.
you have any understanding of the time frame that it will actually take for the project?
Well, that's why we're scheduling the pre-construction walkthrough. So
Okay,
that's why you guys haven't seen a notice to proceed. Mary and I want to sit down as well as Pressler and discuss it with the vendor to find out, okay, what is the lead time for these new tanks? And give us, and let's build a timeline, and then we'll issue the notice to proceed to conform to it. At that point, you guys will be fully informed as well as the tenants.
all right. Any
Yeah.
other questions?
Yeah. Is there any permitting issues?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no issues, but there is permitting involved, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
from the
It is
town.
near shoreline. We're mainly with the town of Coupeville.
Mhm.
But they're fully informed and on board, and Ultra Tanks has vast experience as well as Mary is gathering hers and permitting. So we don't see any issues with timing on that.
So have we already been issued a designation of non-significance for this?
Mary, have we been issued that yet? That will come
No.
through Ultra Tanks, won't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So they'll be the one tasked with applying and going through that.
Oh, okay, all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
all right.
Good question to ask.
7.2 is a discussion of the wharf pile and cap update.
Yeah, almost the same storyline. All the check boxes are there. The notice to proceed is there. We've contacted the vendor, Sorowitz Brothers, and we've asked them to start purchasing materials immediately. We are also waiting for them to come back and schedule a pre-construction meeting. They've had their personnel out there many days already, measuring, looking at the project. They've been on the ground. They're very reactive. They're going to be a good company to work with. Kelly's been managing the process as well as Mary flawlessly so far, no issues. We're hoping that they did take our advice 2 weeks ago and start ordering all the materials and gathering those, which I'm sure they probably have. So at this point, we will issue them a notice to proceed on the 15th. But we will know more about their timeline and when they're actually going to start when we do the pre-construction meeting as well. Please also know that they know, and it's written in the contract, that this job must be completed by December 31st. We want to protect those 0.09 funds that are good until December 31st. And so we'll be expending those first before we utilize the DAP funds if needed. That came from Dave Paul. So did I miss anything, Mary?
Just that Kelly's meeting them out there early in the morning when the tide's low.
That's true.
go
He's
over
meeting
it.
them out there tomorrow morning just to kind of, take a look at things visually with them. That's not considered a pre-construction meeting, but that's something he is doing with one of their, who is the gentleman he's meeting? Do you recognize
I
his
don't
name? 'Cause
know.
I
I
didn't.
thought it was
Yeah, I didn't
maybe
either.
Jesse.
Yeah, but the project's moving forward, so it's fun. It's fun.
So do we expect those two projects to both be complete? Those, the fuel tanks and the pilings to be complete by the end of the year?
We don't, yes, the pile and caps, yes, those expectations have been set. The fuel tanks, we need to really sit down with Kyle
We
and
just
his
don't know
team.
yet.
Yeah, we just don't know because what would delay it, David, would be the fiberglass fuel tank that we're going to be bringing in that has a 50+ year lifespan. So we were told they were in stock, but we were told that 2 months ago when the bidding process went out. So we'll know more once we sit down with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding the pile and cap project? Moving to 7.3, the broadband project update.
Okay, so a lot going on here. Last Thursday was a meeting with Island County, the Mary, Port of Coupeville, and ATCO, who is a sub for Midstate. What a great team. Wow, they're just professionals. And they met with Island County to discuss easements, franchise agreements, and permitting. And there was a lot that came out of that meeting. There's going to be some challenges in the sense that getting a franchise agreement to the county should not be a difficult thing. They don't seem to have a lot of experience with franchise agreements, which is very surprising. At least this current team that is there doesn't. One of the challenges that we are facing is a franchise agreement with the Washington State Department of Transportation. They are telling us that their process is a year and a half out. Kara from Petrichor and ATCO believe that that they have the relationships there, and because we're a municipality, that can be greatly shortened to maybe several months. We're not sure yet. It's kind of a in process conversation that's going on. The design work is about 85% complete. They're looking to probably have it completed, all done by mid to late September, which is very exciting. But the franchise agreements, the easements, the permitting is may or may not be a challenge depending on the location within the build area. So that's kind of a work in progress. The other two things that we're looking at going out, well, one was that we learned we had to have a cultural consultant on hand in certain areas where we're going to dig. And we thought we may have to go out to bid on a second consulting piece of this puzzle. But after consulting with Petrichor and ATCO, and that being Mary, that can actually be subcontracted out with ATCO. So that was good news to know that we don't have to go out to bid again. We don't have to go through that process again, which delays this entire process. The first bid, and what was that entitled, Mary? It's not cultural. It was archaeological.
It was the cultural response plan.
Cultural response plan. So that bid did go out, and we did receive several bids. And actually, Mary and Kara are meeting this Friday to interview 3 of the 4 candidates to pick which one we would recommend to the board. So all of this is moving forward. There's a lot of pieces. I will tell you, it's an immense learning curve for everyone. With that, we have a meeting scheduled in September with Wibby Telecom and their top brass. Kara from Petrichor is flying down for this. It's to discuss our partnership with them. They've got a mid-mile fiber grant that they received. John knows a lot of details about this. It's going to be running right up through the middle of our project. They have a location for a hut, which seems to serve our project very well. Well, it's a location at this point for a hut.
Vague.
It is, but it's what they got now. So we're going to meet and we're going to discuss this business partnership and how we could benefit each other. And if we're going to be building a dark fiber system, and if we're able to do that in one of their huts, there's a lot of opportunity here for both Wibby Telecom and the Port of Coupeville. Especially since we are going to go to a strict dark fiber build. We need to work out there's a lot of details to work out, but if it is going to be in the Wibby Tel hut, how is this going to work with competing ISPs? Thankfully, their grant aligns with ours in that it must be an open access system. So they will need to allow other ISPs to come in to compete. So that's going to be a very, very important conversation, but we're excited that Wibby wants to partner with us and we want to partner with them. So a lot of things to be worked out. So I imagine the next meeting we have in September, there'll be a lot to share as far as where this thing is pointing. So, and the good news is ATCO and Midstate have worked with Wibby before. They're working with them now. So we kind of have this really positive dynamic. And it's not just the port working on their project and Wibby working on theirs. We're both working on them in a linear fashion that where we can cross over, we're making little notes, and then hopefully we'll sit down and discuss those and start making some decisions. So you'll be fully informed. Mary, what have I left out? A lot
You've
of
got
aerial,
everything on the
okay,
broadband.
a lot of aerial. There's going to be little buried. So something that we're going to discuss in the future is maintenance. What happens when that tree severs that line, or a truck hits that pole and knocks that fiber down? The port is going to be responsible for fixing that. As you know, the port doesn't have a bucket truck. We don't have that kind. There are going to be some things to work out. This is why presenting a revenue plan and agreeing to a revenue plan with WBTL is going to be key, because we are going to need to generate revenue from the system to be able to bank for future repairs and maintenance items like that. So there's just so much to work out, but it's been fun.
Do we know anything about insuring this project?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we had to have extra theft insurance that was,
Oh, and no, I mean, upon completion, do we have to, are we going to be insuring X number of miles of fiber?
yeah, that's something we're still trying to work out. Yeah, I have not had a chance to sit down with Joe and go into mass detail on this, and neither has Kara. I've asked her how's this been working out with others. This is a learning curve for them as well, and it may not even be Endurus. It may have to be someone else. So you're right, David. This is just another one of those areas that we're going to have to explore and look at. We had to do certain things as far as bumping up certain areas of our current insurance, and that was done and met through a third party via Endurus. Thankfully, it was reimbursed from our PWB grant, which was great, as will be all future expenses. So at this point, don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
Good question.
I mean, I'm thinking about the fire on Maui and how that,
Yeah,
what a similar kind of situation in one area of this build might create
yeah.
problems for the.
So I will tell you this, and I hesitate because I don't have all the facts, but we spent a lot of time going over the PSE pole attachment agreement. And basically, what we learned is that PSE is saying, look, PSE is saying, look, we're willing to talk to you about letting you go aerial through our poles. We will have no liability whatsoever. And we fought that. And our attorney, Seth, said, we're only going to fight this so far because I've already been down this path with other ports. You are not going to win. And if you keep trying to drag it out, this will take 6 to 8 months before literally you're going to learn that they're going to say no. So we just said, okay, no problem. Signed it to keep moving forward. So with that said, I don't know if David, we even have the ability to insure those lines. Like, I would love to be able to get hold of someone from Comcast and say, hey, when your lines go down, does your insurance pay for it? I don't know if it does or would, so it's something we're going to have to flesh out.
Okay, that seems an important topic to me.
What did Dave say?
What was that,
I
David?
said
What did Dave
that
just say?
seems an important topic to me.
Yeah, well, that's why the whole idea of a revenue model, making sure that we are creating revenue off this dark fiber system to bank for future maintenance, is going to be an important aspect of it.
And all of us should be aware, this is a statewide, we're not the only one dealing with insurance issues, who's responsible and will insurance cover it or not. I mean, months and months and months ago, Endurus spoke to at a WPPA broadband meeting and was basically confessing that they is supposed to have worked up how to handle this. It's like a year ago or more. And the person in charge at Endurus dropped the ball.
Yeah.
So it's like they're scrambling to figure out, a Maui fire, or anything like that, to try to how they would rate the risk factor.
Yeah.
So it's not just the Port of Coupeville, David. It's statewide on anybody that's doing broadband projects, and there's a lot of them going on.
Yeah.
I'm just raising a concern.
Yeah, it's a great concern.
Well, For me,
Yep.
David, the bigger concern now that we're narrowing in on our actual business model, which includes questions like insurance and whatnot, we need to start honing down on the revenue, the pro forma plan that says money coming in, money going out,
Yeah,
and try to now establish what that ballpark number looks like.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why this meeting with Wibbytel is going to be so important as a first step.
Yep. And Petrichor.
Yep. Yep. Completely share your concerns, David. Actually, since day one, that's one of the reasons why the Ziply model was so attractive at first, was they're like, you just give us the money, we are going to take all responsibility. You will not make a penny, but you will not spend a penny type of thing. But their control was so over the top that everyone pretty much that we were working with dropped them. So there's a lot to learn yet, but
Well, I just want to remind everyone involved that the Port of Coupeville is not wealthy. So we have always talked about this project being revenue neutral and expense neutral. And I would like to keep that thought process working. So.
Yep. Understood. That's all I have.
Okay.
Unless I
Any
missed
other
something.
questions for Chris about broadband? Or Mary? Okay, that means we are going to move to 7.4, which is setting priority projects update.
This is Commissioner Callahan is driving this one. The 2 L's.
Hi, guys.
Hey there.
Looking for my piece of paper.
I got it up here for you too, bud, if you need it.
I got it.
Okay.
All right. The last time we visited this, we to drop back, if you will, there was a very detailed list of projects, and one of the feedbacks that we got during that process was we needed to be a little bit more general. And so what I've done is taken all of the projects that we have on the books, essentially, and come up with 16 basic categories regarding things that we want to look at. And I wanted to get from you guys feedback today as to whether or not anything is missing in terms of general picture things. For example, we have Coupeville Wharf and Green Bank Farm deferred maintenance. And then we have number 5 is Coupeville Wharf and Green Bank Farm improvements. So at some future time in this process, we're going to have to get into what is considered deferred maintenance and what would be considered a new project, and come up with some kind of verbiage which would give some direction as to what is something. Is it deferred maintenance or is it a new project? I would assume with that as an example, there would be a probably higher priority for deferred maintenance than something that says improvements. And I just wanted to point out at this point anyway, that none of this stuff, even after we agree to it, is locked in concrete. And so you would think that the way the port approaches this is going to be, for example, we need to do the deferred maintenance first, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to do an improvement because something has come up, like the county came up with a what do you call it, a grant program, or the state comes up with a grant program that would allow us to do some some new projects. So, there will always be opportunities to skip around once we've established the priorities. But so with that as a beginning, what did you guys think about this list?
Well, I think there's some redundancies built in here. I might want to look at it from a little different perspective of a goal-oriented perspective. Like, what do we really want to get done, as opposed to what are the possibilities? I don't know if that makes sense, but to some degree, we're going to have to balance the things that need to be done with a budget. So, if we take X amount of dollars, it would seem to me that we need to develop a fixed set of goals to use those dollars.
Okay.
So this is very broad and general, and to me, the things that are deferred maintenance, for the most part, it would seem to me, are things that are carpenter staff or electrical staff or whatever, the two guys that we consider are project workers. That's kind of what they do, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I think, yeah, good point. I think it's a good list, and I think we have to balance priorities with abilities. Yes, set a budget, look at the budgeting, which Don and I are going to start here in the weeks to come, but it's about abilities too. So I think it's a good starting point. I do think there is a little redundancy in there, and I do agree with Commissioner Callahan. This is going to change almost on a daily to weekly basis as far as its priorities itself. So I think Commissioner Callahan, when you see maybe an updated capital finance plan where we list all the projects and its costs that we will be implementing in the comprehensive scheme, I think some of this will be answered for you, but some of it won't. So
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, it's a good list.
So, Commissioner Mashansik?
I guess, when we went through this exercise before, I had a pretty short list. And I guess the question I still have is, how will this be used? And there's, various people that would use the list, the commissioners for giving direction, staff who actually has to do it, all those external factors of permitting and matching funds and grants and whatnot. So it's just, my tendency is I wanted to keep it very general, very high level. And with some givens being, we know our voters want us to maintain our historic properties. Now, how we can word that is preservation. Can you scroll back down, Chris?
Up or down?
Down. There we go. Whether it's called deferred or preservation or routine. When something breaks, it becomes, and it's the water line, feeding the tenants at the farm. That's a high priority, that they can't flush the toilets or something, so then we get into all this wordplay, of, deferred, routine, emergency, historic project, at some point, it's like it belongs on Chris's desk to say, today we're going to fix that water line. Okay, today we're going to work on replacing the water line so it doesn't break again. Things like that. And that's out of my wheelhouse. And I think our wheelhouse, sit there. He needs to bring it to us and say, by the way, we fixed the water line. By the way, I've got a grant that we can replace the water line so when it won't break again. Right. And then, so, to me, Chris is the hub of all this. I don't know that we need to be doing his job per se, right, Chris?
Yeah. I agree.
As much as we like to stumble into that area. So to me, things like, like somebody just outlined, I guess Chris did, workforce housing. I mean, that's a high level project, new value to the community. It's going to require some creative thought process for funding, things like that. To me, that's something that the commissioners can maybe help Chris, check around what other communities are doing, talk to other commissioners around the state, and read the articles being written about other ports and what they're doing for affordable housing. And so to me, that's something that should be on the list. But and even the word priority, is ill-defined to me. Priority, does that mean it's something that has to be done the next day, the next week, the next year? Or is it just saying to Chris, this is what's important to me as a single commissioner, and I think that's why the list gets a little out there sometimes. Number 13, that warms the cockles of my heart. I just, because I put some effort into working with the biochar people, talking to the guy that runs the Island County biosolids disposable program. So I've got some time invested in that. Does it mean, jack to the rest of the people involved with the port? Maybe not. So number 14, boy, you can't get much vaguer than that. So anyway, number 16, broadband, I think once we find out, how secure we are about the financing and the profitability or lack of our current broadband project, maybe we wanted to partner up, with other ports or other partners, be it Coupeville, or the county, about additional broadband projects. So, and this is an interesting exercise, but not that easy to do, in my opinion, because there's so many different slices of this loaf of bread. Is it about time? Is it about money? Is it about personnel? A combination of all of those, grants, permitting. So it's an interesting exercise with some of them being real obvious, So when we say, keep the wharf there and keep the farm there, operational and above water and a solid roof over the buildings on the farm. Yeah, duh. And that's a duh moment that Chris is charged with, making it happen. Do we need to tell him, duh, keep the wharf above water and keep the farm dry? I don't think so. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, well, thank you for your feedback. I don't think anybody here is talking about telling Chris when he needs to fix a pipe. That's really get down in the weeds. But let me ask you this, just for the purposes of discussion, which do you think is of a greater priority? for people to spend their time on. Let's take a look at the port management succession plan development versus, you want to go up to the top, please, Chris? The front street preservation projects, which do you think is more important?
Are you asking us, the commissioners?
All right, yeah,
Yeah, I think he is, yeah.
My response to that would be the lower one, the port management succession plan development.
I'm not even
Right.
sure what it means. What does that mean?
It means what happens if something happens to Chris?
Right.
Ah, okay.
That's what it means to me.
yeah, I mean, that's what the thing, that's how it got on the list.
It was,
All right,
it
so-
was someone who rides a motorcycle. And
Right, that was
You
terrible,
are.
actually.
this is a really interesting thing to me because a friend of mine who is he and his wife just moved to Idaho. He's an outdoor guy, and he crashed his bicycle, not a road bike, but a
Trail bike.
Mike?
trail bike. He broke his pelvis, both elbows, serious concussion, and 8 ribs. He's not going to be doing very much for the next 6 months.
This was not the accident that just took place on 527 near the farm where somebody got killed, is
No,
it?
he was riding in the woods in Idaho.
Right. This was
Yeah.
because we just had a motorcycle accident this weekend. So, all right. At any rate,
But
the
that's my answer to your question.
yeah, no, and
I've
that's
been an
that's
advocate
perfect.
of this for quite some time, ever since COVID started eating
Yeah,
in.
no, I mean that's a great example. So you
It
might
is.
want to consider this as a guideline, not something that has to be followed precisely, and certainly not down into the fix-a-pipe area. But certainly, when we order this, then if there is either a financial constraint or a personnel constraint, then this list can be used, or these priorities can be used to provide some guidance as to where the effort should be concentrated. So obviously, we need to define some of these things, obviously, from the comments I've just heard now. Yeah, so the question I have is, do you want to continue with this exercise or not?
I see value in it. I'm just the format. It's like almost like the rules of the game. I'm not sure what the rules of the game is. It to make sure staff are working on like number 15. And we have like a deadline, that we want it in place, say by the end of a calendar year or quarter or something like that, so that we sleep better at night knowing that the accident happens and somebody's going to be out of commission for 6 months or a year or forever. Maybe it's just how are we going to, is this going to create us saying at a meeting, let's put it on the agenda and give us an update on number 15. Is that what we're saying?
No, that's not what I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning that this is a guideline. And so once we agree on it, I assume this is going to change every year by whoever the commissioners are going to be. But whenever we decide what the guidelines are, then anybody who's executing either the budget or the what do you call it? The not maintenance, the administration has this thing to go to see what it is that we think is important. That's all.
Well, I think we actually went through this like several years ago, tried to, and we asked Chris to develop the list. And Chris basically put everything on there that he was doing.
And that was the capital finance plan.
Yeah, well, even
Yeah.
before then, Chris, I think it was one of those, Mohammed, yeah, myself, yeah, Commissioner Bell was gone by then. So again, it's just the implementation of it is going to fall. A lot of it's going to fall back on Chris, and I think what we hear is that there are not enough hours in the day already. So maybe it's a tool for the commission to then kind of say, hey, Chris, on the next meeting, can you bring us up to date about number 15, number whatever.
Again, John, I'm not using, I don't see it being used that way. We have, there's 3 commissioners here, and had a discussion last week about the length of the meetings that we have, right? And so, for example, I think personally, by the way, that it's very important for us to develop programs that are going to make routine maintenance for both the farm and the wharf doable. In other words, stuff to in addition to the money we get from the taxes to defer some of that stuff. I think that's very important. Now, that's just me, right? So as we as a group develop these particular programs, you may think that workforce housing is more important than that. All right. So the question is, how are we as commissioners going to spend our time debating or trying to come up with action items that we want to see taken? And so with 3 commissioners looking at a priority list and ranking them as a commission, whatever at the bottom of the list is probably not going to be a lot of time spent on it by the commissioners.
Maybe
not Chris. This is it's got nothing to do with Chris.
yeah.
This is priorities for the commission.
Okay, I get that.
May I throw some input in there, Commissioner Callahan?
I'd like to continue with the other commissioners right now, please.
Okay.
David, what was your comment here?
Well, I thought I made my comment, but I think the idea of developing a list of priorities for moving the farm and the wharf and the port in general forward is an important thing. I think, but I also think that protecting what we have is important. So things like, I'm pretty sure that we're not working on number 15 right now, right? I know that Chris has put together a book of stuff,
Right.
But if Chris left for the weekend and got in a motorcycle accident, or got T-boned on the way home, or whatever, I think that's one of the most important things that the commissioners need to look at. And that's something that John can tell you all the stories there are about not having an ED present.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that was an enjoyable time for the Port of Coupeville. I don't think it was an enjoyable time for the commissioners of the Port of Coupeville at that time. So
all 2 of us.
So I think that those are the kinds of things that while they fall ultimately within the purview of Chris's work, those are things that are outside the, you know, that, and it doesn't just apply to Chris, it would be something that would be developed as a tool for the future as well. So,
So what I'm hearing, Dave, that would be a higher priority than even things relative to, well, maybe not higher. So that's where, again, priority has a funny, to me, does that mean you have to do only that one? Or you work on it a little bit, a project, and then in the day you work on the next higher?
we're not gonna stop doing daily maintenance. We're not gonna stop doing deferred
Right.
maintenance. We're not gonna stop doing the projects that we have underway.
Right.
Many of those things are listed here if you were to have subtexts under each category. I think what I'm thinking about is things that are kind of out of the box, maybe a little bit, and look toward the future of the port. Like one of the things that's not on here at all is expanding the port,
I thought it was.
right?
I don't see it.
The other
I'm
thing
very
that-
sorry, David, that was supposed to be on here.
Yeah, another thing that would seem reasonable to me would be have a dedicated time each week or each month for some person in staff to research grants for an hour every week. You know, that's just a thought, but that's, you know, that's, I don't know. And I don't know if that's something that's going on now or not. Right. But we have enough different, areas of concern that, you know, and, you know, and maybe that's a commissioner, I don't know. You know, maybe that's something a commissioner commits to do once a month for 2 hours. Because there are, I'm sure there are things that go by us that would be helpful, but because we're so small, or because we're so, we have a limited staff, and you know, we don't get to, I know that we play with the county a little bit, but we don't interact with the county all that much, I don't think. Anyway, I think this should continue to be a work in progress, and I think we should continue to discuss it from time to time, and see if we can put it in context a little better than we're doing at this point.
Thank you. Chris, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Callahan. First of all, I think this is a good list. I highlighted what I thought were 7 things on the list that were more of a board responsibility, right? The board is at 30,000 feet. They set policy. They communicate with the public to see what the public needs and wants are. They come back to discuss those. They're not managing deferred maintenance and daily decision-making. They're at that 30,000 foot level. And when I look at this list, it's a great list. You know, most of this falls on my shoulders, and we manage, you know, all these things up here on a daily basis. And we've got a good internal team to do that. I highlighted what I thought were possibly those projects or those topics for discussion that a board would discuss. You know, new projects, you know, what direction does the board want to take the port with the funds that's available and the budget that's available? 14's, it is very loosey-goosey, but it's something that a board would look at. You know, do we purchase an airport, right? Port expansion, that's a board decision. Port management succession plan at the small ports conference. The port of Skagit did a whole presentation that they have a 5-year program on the ED succession plan. And I think that was, and the board gave that presentation. Workforce housing, not a staff decision. That's the board to go out, seek feedback and discuss whether that is a project that we can do. So I think it's a great list. I think you guys can shorten this list quite a bit. My goal, as you've known for years, is try to keep the board responsibility separate from the executive director responsibility. So there is efficiency in how I can do my job with the staff I have and the budget I have, and that I stay in my lane and the board stays in its lane. So that's why sometimes you'll hear pushback from me on certain things. I'm not trying to be combative at all. I answer to you 3, but I would start with this list of 7.
I think your idea, Chris, is really well put.
Thank you.
And pretty much centered perfectly. So if the 3 of us started out with those 7 things and maybe a couple other things that might be missing, and shortened them to real priorities, I think that'd be great.
So what I'm hearing is that there's the activities that Chris is responsible for pulling off, getting the Coupeville Wharf projects done, fixing stuff at the farm, getting staff to do things. These are the 30,000 foot level things that are more in the commissioner's side of the table. Is that what I'm hearing, David? The highlighted.
I think at least the beginnings of them is, and then, directing staff to fill in some blanks or something like that.
Okay.
I think is perfectly legitimate. Or helping to, I'm not well versed in certain aspects of, I don't know anything about workforce housing really. So, but certainly I'm willing to, if that was a priority for the port, I would be willing to do some homework. I've brought up the idea of seeing whether or not, and this would to me fall into projects to ensure financial self-sufficiency of port assets, is to have us look into repurchasing the development rights at the farm, or some of them. And I think, that's staff would probably be important in part of that. Anyway.
Well, who we're leaving out of this?
I think we should keep working at it.
Well, who we're leaving out of this whole discussion? The community. What does the community want the port to be doing?
Exactly.
And then that's the dull moment. The community is going to say, keep the wharf afloat. Okay, what else? Well, keep Greenbank Farm viable. Okay, what else?
Can we say something on a financial aspect?
Sure.
As far as the list goes, John?
Certainly, Dawn, go ahead.
When we were promoting the IDD, there was a lot of there was just a lot to do with the dredging of the cove and extending the docks and promoting that part of the IDD, going towards that, if I remember right. And so if I'm wrong, for some reason that's what I remember when we were doing all that. And I think that if we're going to be making a list for future important items, that might be something, since it's a gigantic project, that needs to be on the list. And my other thing, not on this topic, is can you guys respond to the emails for the vouchers, please?
Was that,
Oh, yeah.
what'd she say?
The voucher list that was sent out earlier, I
Yeah.
forgot. Typically I pause and have you guys do that. Sorry.
Oh,
But
oops.
I would like very much to continue this thought process. But I think for today, we've covered as much as we need to cover. I don't know if you have a next step in mind, John, or
I think the next step really would be to put some verbiage to each of these projects. I mean, one of the things that I heard, and it was an interesting list that Chris has here, but if you took out things like deferred maintenance from the priority list, that would indicate that it doesn't have a priority, and we know that it is probably the number one priority is
well,
catching up on the deferred maintenance. So I think what we're looking at really is defining what these things are, and I think that would be the next step.
I will tell you that my job since day one has been deferred maintenance.
right. And I
I
think
know.
Yeah.
what Chris pointed out was that the first 8 things are already on his list, and he's doing them.
Right,
Right.
right.
They're already a priority. So I think what he was also pointing out was that the commission needs to develop some priorities of their own that look a little in some ways deeper into the way the port works, and in some ways from a higher perspective about the way the
Futuristic.
port works today and in the future. I don't think it's Chris's job ultimately to look toward the future. His job is to look at today and
Mhm.
tomorrow and get some things done.
Hmm.
Yep.
Agreed.
So that's the way I'm thinking about this topic.
Hmm.
Well, I just emailed you this updated list with the highlights and the number 17 added. So you have it in
Super.
your inboxes.
What about, well, would you like to do this, Chris?
No, I'm just trying to help. I think it's a worthy conversation. I just want to help.
What happened? By the way, why did you take recycling programs out?
Because it needs to be further defined. We have a recycling program here, both with events and our office. So until it's further defined, you guys do whatever you want. I'm just trying to help parse out and keep a focus on the difference between an executive director and a board responsibility.
Well, I like Dave's last comment. Chris knows what he's got to do today and tomorrow. To me, the commissioners need to look down the road a little bit. So do we need to sign the voucher document? I just noticed it showed up. Does Dawn
Yeah.
need that voucher
Yeah.
document? Do we need to take a break and do that?
If you guys are done discussing this, yes, but only if you're done discussing this.
You want me to take the items from 9 through, or excuse me, excise those items that Chris is already doing, and then concentrate on the others?
I like that. That sounds nice.
I would agree with that at this point.
Okay. I will do that.
Let's go sign some vouchers.
Thank you.
How do I do that? Hang on.
You're just replying all.
I know, but I got to pick up the email.
Oh,
Okay, there's Fort email. Okay, there it is.
I'm going to excuse myself for about a minute.
Okay, how do I do this? Got so many open windows here. I can't even see the damn reply all button. Block save.
Hey, Chris, could you,
Yes,
could you take this down for a second? I can't see my
I
agenda.
can't pick up the emails because I've got too many open windows showing now. Okay, I need to
Oh, darn.
dismiss that.
I just replied to the wrong one.
When the heck am I going to get that?
I don't think that you replied to the wrong one, John. I have it here,
Yeah,
and it
I-
looks like the
the right one.
vouchers list. You did just fine.
Okay. So the one I sent you is okay?
Yes, it is.
Okay, reply all. There we go. Finally.
okay, so we have not got an answer back yet. Okay. Okay.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
I haven't
Yeah.
received.
Yes,
Okay,
mine just got sent.
okay.
All right.
Sure, it will
So,
come soon. No worries.
so we have moved now from 7.4, we're moving to 7.5 to discuss the upcoming budget situation.
Yeah, so this is gonna really, we try to keep this very consistent every year because of timing, working backwards from when the budget is due. The only thing that is gonna be a little different this year is our public hearing for the IDD, which I will have all this set up. I'll have the resolutions written. I've actually written them already. And it was scheduled for September the 27th, but because we will not have a quorum on September the 27th, we're gonna move that to October 4th. Okay, so that is really the only change
Is there any
is,
chance of moving it further into October, Chris? I won't be home until the 6th.
okay. Let me look really quick.
Which I believe is a Thursday or a Friday.
Yeah, the October 6th is a Friday, but you're coming home on that day, right, David? So that wouldn't be a
Yes.
good day for you.
No, that's the day I arrive home and it'll be late in the day.
So October 9th could work. Okay,
Is there a
it
reason
is,
that is there a reason that we can't just incorporate it into our first monthly meeting?
on the 11th.
Yes. Or does it need to be a special meeting?
Well, it's a public hearing, which as you've known in the past, we rarely have anyone attend those. So I've been trying to keep the public hearings on their own date, try to attract more people, and then I have to work out dates for ads. Let me go back. Excuse me for a second here. Where I just get this out of here. So October 11th special must finish by October 17th. Yeah, we may be able to move that to October 11th and just do a split meeting on that day.
Right.
And that way you would be here for that. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and change that to October the 11th.
If that's all right with the other commissioners, I'd really appreciate it. I think it keeps us from having a separate meeting, which saves a little bit of money, and also condenses everything a little bit.
Yeah, and the hearing has more flexibility with it for the IDD, just because we're up against a timeline with the actual budget itself. We're actually up against a timeline with the IDD as well. We have to file all of those resolutions by the same day. But I think it's
So why does it say not earlier than October 30th in this thing we're looking at on our screen?
That's the timeline that I got to work backwards from to turn in the budget. So as long as the IDD hearing is before the hearing on November 1st, which is the budget hearing, which has a timeline that must be executed moving backwards. It's a little confusing. We'll be okay. So moving it to October the 11th, which is our first meeting of that month, should be fine.
That's all right with the other commissioners. That would work well, I think.
Yeah, I'm just not, you're saying October 11th meets the guidelines that you're showing to us right now, Chris?
For a public hearing for the IDD only, it would not work for the budget, because the budget has to be done in certain in a certain time frame towards when it's due. I know it's a little confusing. So we have more flexibility with the hearing for the IDD than we do for the budget. The budget is on a set timeline that can't be done no later than the second Tuesday. But the IDD is separate. You guys are basically just deciding after you have a hearing what rate, if any, you are going to impart for 2024. So we can have that IDD hearing on the 11th. We just can't mess with the hearing on November 1st for the budget.
The preliminary budget?
Yes. Well, the preliminary budget has to be finished by the 17th, because the first ad for the public to be able to come in and view the preliminary budget is on the 18th.
Okay.
So that's why I basically, from the October 17th to the end of this process in November, I have a very strict guideline that I have to follow.
So will we be discussing the preliminary budget on October 11th?
No, that would be the IDD.
No, I know.
Well, we'll start
hearing, but as just a discussion.
Yeah. So here's what's going to happen is that I am actually hoping that we can give you a very preliminary budget. Was at the end of September. And this is another reason why I wanted to keep it on October 4th, but I do understand that you won't be here, David, is Don and I wanted to get the first version of the preliminary budget done by September 27th. We always want to give you guys at least 2 meetings or 4 weeks to review it. And this is going to be a difficult budget because of the increases in endurance insurance costs and how I need to work labor. It's going to be a pretty intense budget. If we move that meeting back, that was supposed to be on September 27th, and now we cancel that essentially, and we don't have another one until October 13th, you guys have 1 meeting to discuss the budget.
October 11th, you mean?
Well, you would have October 11th, my bad, and then you would have October 25th. And that's it. So we always try to give you more time, but it just means that when that budget gets sent out.
Knowing that Commissioner Callahan and I will not be here at the second September meeting,
Right.
What then is your recommendation?
Well, when I suggested the October 4th for the IDD hearing, I forgot that you were still going to be out. So I'm glad we brought it up. And I have no problem moving it to the 11th. What Don and I will try to do is by the end of September, we will be getting you, and I know that may or may not fall into your schedule, Commissioner Day, but we will be getting you the preliminary budget to start reviewing. And then we'll have to really hit it. We'll have a public hearing on October 11th. We'll stop the hearing. We'll start our regular open public meeting. And we're going to try to keep the agenda limited to the preliminary budget
Okay,
and some minor business. And then we need to go through that line item by line item like we've done in the past and really hit it hard. Then you guys will be able to get the changes that you suggested on the 11th. And then you'll be able to come back and you'll have some time between the 11th and the 25th to review those changes. And then we discuss them more in detail, make any last minute changes on the 25th of October. And then November 1st, the very next week, I believe it is, we'll have the public hearing on November 1st. And then, of course, the regular meeting, the first meeting in November is when you guys would approve the budget.
so
That's November 8th.
We'll have a special meeting on November 1st.
Yeah, that is actually going to be the hearing for the budget.
Okay,
Yeah. So at that point, the community will have been able to see the preliminary budget that was available on October the 18th. You will be able to discuss the preliminary budget on the 11th, which would allow Don and I to have a more updated budget for the 18th when the ad hits the paper, that it's available for the public to view. So I apologize if I'm confusing you, but.
and I apologize for being gone, but I can't do much about it at this point. So,
I think
So
it's a good-
Chris,
Yep.
let's clarify what's on our screen right now.
Okay,
This public hearing IDD is no longer on October the 4th.
we're gonna move that to October the 11th, and it'll be before our regular open public meeting for that month.
And we're canceling the second meeting of September.
Yes, September 27th will be canceled. There's no quorum.
Okay.
And I will send out an email and I will resend out the timeline and I'll also send an email reminding you that September 27th is canceled.
Okay. And all of us will be attending the October 11th
Yes,
combined IDD/regular meeting.
yes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
I will also miss the first meeting in September.
Sure. On the 13th, yeah, and
Yes.
it won't have anything to do with this timeline.
Right, I'm just reminding the
Yeah.
other commissioners that
Okay, that's all I had for 7.5. Thank you.
I got a question, please.
Sure.
The hearing, the public hearing for the IDD. This is just information, or rather, this is just to give the public the ability to comment if they want on the IDD. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And then when do we determine what rates are going to be in effect for the IDD?
You guys could actually discuss it on that same day during the regular open public meeting. Then you have another opportunity on the 25th of October to discuss it again. And then you will make your decision. And you can also discuss it again on November 1st. Well, maybe not November 1st. That's just a hearing for the budget. You'll make your decision on November the 8th. along with the approval of the 2024 budget.
Thank you. That cleared it up for me.
Yeah, and just, I don't want to make it any more confusing, but also in this process, on the agenda will be the updated comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, which my goal is to update the capital finance plan, which is on the last page. My opinion, one of the more important documents in that. And any verbiage that the board feels they need to update on the scheme. So there are really three things going on. But two of them are more date sensitive. So I'll make sure in my emails with the agendas forthcoming that I explain all of this to you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I would recommend, Commissioner Callahan, if you have questions about this process, that you and Chris sit down together, because this will be your first budgeting process. So that any preliminary questions that you might have, because we are under a timeline, can get addressed in a timely fashion.
You bet.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm concerned about, David, is something that you raised last time regarding the budget process. And actually, I was there for those discussions, and you mentioned that the cost of personnel exceeds what we get from the tax, for the tax money.
Well, I don't think it exceeds it, but it sure pushes it.
Yeah, I thought you said it did, but I was wondering whether that in fact is the case.
Well, that is one of the major focus points that Don and I will be looking at, is that we have all these amazing projects. We've got IDD funds to drive them, but we need staff to do it. And so we are trying to figure out how we are going to allocate monies from CRM to labor back, what can be parsed out for IDD. That's why the capital finance plan is going to be very important. What projects are $5,000 and more that we will use IDD, which will free up CRM, which could also free up labor. So it's going to be a very important budgeting process. And we also got to look at our $26,000 or $27,000 increase in our insurance premium. So we have a lot to look at.
So, okay. Can you take that down, please, Chris? Thank you.
You got it.
So that completes our old business, I believe, and we'll move to 8.1. Something about introducing wharf and farm advisory committees. I don't know what that is.
I asked for that to be included based on discussion that we had either the last meeting or the meeting before that. And John made a reference to it today, and that is that public input is needed for things like priorities and what they want to have happen. And so I just wanted to open up the discussion. And I noticed, by the way, in the plan that we had, the capital, can't think of the word now, the one that Chris sent out, it actually mentions advisory committees. And so I'm wondering, what do we have to do to establish these volunteer advisory committees and have them, like meet quarterly and give the board input as to what they think is important for both the wharf and the book farm.
Well, I have one suggestion. And if we want to have wharf and farm advisory committees, my first suggestion would be to notify the public of that via our website and our monthly newsletter and see what kind of response we get.
Yeah.
Like, simple question would be, would you be interested in participating in an advisory committee for the Green Bank Farm Or would you be interested in being on an advisory committee for the Coupeville Wharf? And
What
see
about,
what kind of response we get, because I'll be very surprised if we get very much response.
David, what about organizations that would have value to an advisory committee? Like I know in the Coupeville Wharf area, there's preservation groups and historical groups, etc. Wouldn't they want to be?
Probably, but I guess what I'm saying is if let's start with individual people
Okay.
and see what kind of response we get.
Yeah, Commissioner Callahan's idea is a good one on the associations. We already work with them,
Right.
John, with EBs and Chua, the historical. Oh, we work with them. Even we talk about signs at the wharf. We create a committee to do it. So well said. It is in the comprehensive scheme, and I'm glad you saw that. And the reason that was put in there at the time, because we had no grant money. When I started that comprehensive scheme, they were in the process of choosing a vendor, and John Mashasek went through this, Commissioner Mashasek. And we put that in there because one of the vital pieces of trying to get funding or a tax levy lid lift was having these advisory committees for the community, because they can go out and raise money to advertise for these levies where the port does not have the ability to spend money on advertising on its own levy. So those committees were vital in that process. Since then, we've applied for 14, 16 grants and pretty much got all of them. So the need for those committees actually subsided. And we did have trouble trying to form them in the beginning. So there's a quick history.
David, do you think it would be wise to put in this notification looking for volunteers some general parameters around the committee so that people understand what they're getting into? So for example, I would suggest they meet quarterly. And that
My own personal feeling is to dip our toe in the water and see what kind of response we get. And if we get 20 people interested in that, then we can develop the criteria. If we don't get very much interest, then I think we should think about another attack.
My only thought is if somebody asked me if I wanted to volunteer for something, I'd want to know how much time is involved. And if they wanted me to meet on a weekly basis, that's a hell of a lot different than meeting once a quarter.
I agree, but I think my own personal feeling is we have to begin very simply and see what kind of response we get. So if we get questions like how much time does it involve? Great. Then we know they're interested. That's my feeling. I mean, you guys, I'm not going to be around when all this stuff happens. So it's really, I'm looking forward to be on the advisory committee for the Coupeville Wharf.
So we got our first volunteer.
Absolutely.
Do I hear a second?
So that's only if I get accepted into the committee. So
yeah. John, what's your view on this?
I've been around long enough to see this concept be tried before. And, we had sometimes a committee was formed that had bias and internal issues that they thought they wanted to take over the farm on one committee. Remember that, Chris?
Oh, yeah.
So be careful what you wish for.
Yep.
Part of me is like, I'm almost wondering, are we making it too focused, wharf and farm? Should it be the Port of Coupeville Advisory Committee? Since we're talking about expanding the footprint, number one. And
Yep.
number two, it gives an opportunity to try to educate people about the benefit to the community of a port, regardless of what it owns.
I think that's an interesting and
Yeah.
valid idea, John, and subcommittees could be developed from that committee if necessary, or if it worked out. I think that's a real interesting idea.
I agree.
Yeah. Wow.
So-
Those types of committees are to educate. They're to help educate, and they're to help raise money to spend on educating that the port can't. That's where I see the value of those committees. So doing something wharf-wide, port-wide, that's very interesting.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I would like to suggest that we as a commission direct our staff to offer that opportunity on our website and in the next couple of monthly emails that we send out. I can't even remember what we call it now. What do we call it, Chris? What's
The
our
current?
Currents.
The current, yeah.
current?
Okay.
Yes.
I may be able to get it in the one that's going out today or tomorrow, not sure, but it'll definitely be in the next couple. And I think it's going to be interesting because we can't get people to show up to our meetings unless it's something very emotional.
Right.
So it'll be interesting.
Are the commissioners in concurrence with that idea?
I am.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, I'm pretty much in everybody's face as I move through the community about the port. And in their face I got people now groomed that they get near me, they say, "So what's going on with the port?" Because they know I'm going to tell them anyway. It's just, you educate them one person at a time.
Yeah.
You groom people one person at a time. I'm already trying to groom somebody to be my replacement when I get too old and more feeble. So, it's, I think, surveying is one thing, but it's like grabbing them by the elbow and saying, "Hey, ports are valuable. They can be more valuable. Do you want to participate?"
Well, John, you've brought up more than once today the idea of listening to the public, and so I think this is a way for us to get the public involved so that the board can listen, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think there's no one solution. Us being aggressive about talking. I've been invited to attend the Lions. Let's see, that would be the Coupeville Lions to give an update. Janet Birchfield was their presentation person at that organization. I showed up, did a presentation on where we were with saving the wharf, and at the end, I kind of laid into the Lions and said, "Hey, you guys need to elect better commissioners. You guys need to understand the port better. You guys need to get it in gear. You're a taxpayer. Get it in gear." And boy, there were some eyes raised, but the message was, if you're going to be lackadaisical about an entity that can really help the community, you're going to get what you put into it. So, but that's just my style. I'm not I call it like I see it sometimes, and I think the community can do better.
When were you invited to this meeting, and when did you attend?
God, this has to be a year and a half ago.
Yeah, I hit them every year myself. The other club will ask me to come in and speak to them at the Thai restaurant.
Right. So I believe we've directed you to dip our toe in the water, Chris, and see what happens.
Got it.
So let's move to 8.2.
Okay.
The
So-
Coupeville Wharf Airbnb problem. And
Yeah, I just want to keep you guys
I read
informed
the
on
letter from the town,
that. Thank you for reading that.
but other than that, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, so what happened was one day there's a boat showed up, they paid their mortgage fees and said, "We're going to be here for a little bit." We said, "Well, you can only stay here for so long, then you got to move out for 2 weeks and come back," and they understood. And then Danielle noticed that there was different couples leaving there every so many days. went to go look into it, and they had parked their boat there. They're paying the mortgage fee, but they're conducting an Airbnb on our dock. We have no rule against that. We have no rule for that, but it falls under the town of Coupeville. So Danielle smartly called Donna Keeler in the town of Coupeville, which, as you all know, or most of you, the town of Coupeville is very strict against Airbnb within the town limits. And we asked them, what would be your ruling on this? And there was your letter saying, we're not going to support this at the time. Danielle and I have talked about this extensively. We do not support it as well. We don't even want to put up even if the town said it was okay to do, we don't feel it's an appropriate thing to have a business operating off our dock, unless there's some kind of different mortgage fee associated with that. I mean, we lease space here to businesses to conduct their business, whether they're profit or nonprofit. We don't have a rule right now that says anything otherwise on the dock. So this is a first for us. So right now we're letting them know that this cannot continue and will not move forward. But I wanted to bring it to your attention because it's unique, number one, and it may involve creating a policy against it, number two. When I get back, it's not my highest priority, but at some point I would like to try to draft something that may be a resolution that the board could consider if they are against it, or if they're not and they want to promote something like this, then we need to create a resolution that allows it as long as the town allows it.
Let me ask a couple questions. One, are they still doing it now?
I know Danielle's been in contact with them. They are a couple out of Oregon. They have not been easy to get a hold of. And as of right now, I don't know if they've been given a notice to cease and desist. But the letter has been shared with them. But I will find out.
I think that goes against the lease that we have with the state of Washington.
Oh, with the Department of Natural Resources.
Yes.
Brilliant. Well,
Because it's we have a recreational use lease. Is that not correct?
you know, I'm not sure, David. I've never seen that in the document. So I will look into that. That's a good point.
Maybe the
And-
people staying on the boat are recreating.
Yeah,
Well-
but that's not it's not their boat.
Right.
And so someone is in effect making money
Right.
at the expense of the Port of Coupeville. So what happens if something happens to those people? I mean, is Suva required to have insurance to moor at the wharf?
So no, they don't have to have insurance that names the port on their certificate of liability, but we charge them $1 per passenger. So
Okay.
it's an MOU that we have with them.
Okay,
So that's why this is sticky. Well, right now the answer is no, because the town of Coupeville said no.
right.
But you bring up a great point about DNR. So I will research that and figure out if that's another way to say no.
I mean,
So-
I don't know how the other commissioners feel about this, so I mean, theoretically, if we allow one person to do that, the whole wharf could be taken up by, 40-foot boats that,
Yep.
want to have people, crap in the water. So, I don't know. My own feeling is that that's not the purpose of those floats.
And staff agrees.
But I don't know what the other commissioners feel, so I would welcome a response from that, so.
I have a question. Is a mooring dock inside the city limits?
The town limits?
Yeah,
Well, we raised that question during every time we had to file a permit. Why are we filing a permit with you? We lease this land from DNR. And their answer is yes. But you look at the tax lots, it doesn't go out to the mud over the water.
no.
It's a very interesting question.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways,
when it makes money for them, we're in the city limits. When it doesn't,
oh,
it's our problem.
look at the money they made on the roof permit alone. My Lord, we had no idea it was gonna be over $10,000. So I just want to inform the board that this was a unique scenario that came up in case you're asked. I never want you to be surprised. Right now, I've got a text message out to Danielle. I'm pretty sure we asked them to cease and desist. We also want to be sensitive to the fact they may have booked a couple, so we're trying to work with them, but I don't know where it is today, but I'll let you know.
So are we expecting the police, the town marshal to go out there and knock on the boat?
No, not at this time. I need to get more information from
How big a boat
Danielle.
is
She's
it?
off on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so.
How big a boat is it?
I don't know. I think it's a 30-footer, but I don't know for sure. It's not taking the Suva spot, but it's taking the other side of the Suva spot. And those are our two deepest spots. So right off the bat, with Suva's there, and if
So
something
they're
like this,
paying us $30 a night?
yeah, they're paying on time. They're being a responsible owner of the boat by paying what they owe. They have no problem with that. While they're probably charging $200 a night or whatever that is they're charging.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting situation.
Yeah. You learn something every day. So
I actually would recommend that we look into the lease with the with DNR, but also perhaps have a short conversation with our attorney. Because if they're renting space, if they're renting a space but having people who, I'm concerned about liability.
Yeah. That's,
Do we have a rule about drinking on the wharf still? We used to.
we don't have a rule. And when I asked Endurus about this, can people have open container on the back deck? And they said, you can do whatever you want. Just make sure you're compliant with county and town rules.
Right, but they can't drink on the floats, right? They can drink in their boat, but not on the.
They can drink in their boat and they can drink within the confines of the cafe, anybody who has a license.
Right.
I will say that if someone has a bottle of wine and they bring it up and they sit at a picnic table and drink it, I don't think my gut feel without knowing is that we're not going to ask them to bottle it up and leave. But typically, like I've never seen anyone with open container down at the wharf myself, but I'm not down there all the time.
Okay.
So I will follow up on that as well. Good
One of those
question.
things that probably ought to hit the priority list, John.
Well, that's on my shoulders. I'll do that. So
I think John Mashanchik raises a very good question. I don't know why, but I thought that from the low water line out belongs to the state, not any private owner.
it does. It's
but
Department
I
of
don't know
Natural
that for a
Resources.
fact. Although a lot of the sea was one of the things I did, but I don't recall what that is. But anyway, that's interesting, because if it turns out that the city of Coupeville really has no jurisdiction there, then the question is, what kind of a policy do we have with our for the wharf? And
Why do we pay that permit?
Yeah, I agree
Right.
totally with David. I think the issue is liability. From a practical standpoint, the way Airbnb works is you give people a key to get on, and when they leave, they clean up supposedly. Well, most people that own boats are going to be taking care to get off the boat and get onto dock, and vice versa. That may not be the case for somebody that rents a boat for a night or 2 nights. Picks it up out of the newspaper and says, "Well, this would be a great experience," and so that the chances of people getting injured getting on and off boats, I think, is greater. And that's a big liability issue. It's our dock. So
Right. I worry about things like fire and injury and all those things. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I
Well, I'll
think,
keep you guys posted. I'm gonna contact DNR because I have a new rep there. She's very responsive. So that's a great point, David. Thank you for bringing that up. But as of
I-
now, the answer is no, because the town of Coupeville said no. And I will keep challenging them on their right to permit us over water.
Good.
All right, that's all I have for 8.2.
any other questions, comments, thoughts in this regard? Moving to 8.3. Insurance premium, we've eliminated, oh no, we're gonna have a short discussion here.
Yeah. Well, I sent you guys all the information I could from Joe. He is willing to come talk to you guys some point, maybe October 11th, to answer any deeper questions. The things I didn't share in the email that I can share with you now, just a couple points, is that they have been a good company to work with. They have insured things and been very gracious on certain claims that honestly I did not think they were going to support. One being when we burned out the pumps in 17 or 18, when apparently a squirrel hit a
Brownout.
transformer, what I was told. And those pumps burned out, which is called a brownout. They were not covered, and they found a way to cover them. They actually worked to find a way to cover them. That was 27,000. When the light poles blew down from the big storm, those light poles were not on the inventory list, and they let me add them and then covered them. And I will tell you that I really doubt other insurance companies would do something like that. Now, I'm not being an advocate for Endurus. I'm just stating some facts. But he had also told me that pretty much every port except for 10 ports in the state of Washington are through them. 3 of those 10 are going back to Endurus. Two of the other 7 are with a company called CIAW that I think I put in the email, only because that company's headquartered in an area where 2 ports are located. And I'm in the process of trying to figure out who the other competitors are that could provide us a quote. Commissioner Mashasek asked about, as he mentioned earlier, about changing the premium by changing the deductible. That's not an option right now. But I do have that question still out to Joe. And that's all I can really tell you. If you looked at that sheet, we had $347,000 or 347,000 or 374 in the last 7 years. It's a 10-year report. We've had a lot of claims. So he explained them all. I don't understand it 100%. But I don't really have anything more to say on it.
Is there any pattern in the claims that we can manage something better?
Yeah. So when I look back, the flooding, David Day was there when the flooding happened, right? The Forest Rambo was a lesson learned, I think. And that was, I inherited that. Almost everything else has been nature related, right? The brownout, the storms, the freezing of the pipes. The only other thing that really wasn't was when the lady was dragging her feet down the causeway and got a splinter in her toe. But
Yeah.
we gave her $2,000 and sent her on her way. So I don't think that's a major issue. It's really been Mother Nature. Now, did we change the pipe system on the wharf to prevent freezing? Yes, we've done that with the sewer line as well. The lights in the parking lot, they were rusted. So, we got them replaced and we fixed that. So I don't know, John, I don't know what to say. It's a good question, but I think when you have this kind of property and we live on an island that can see 70-mile-per-hour winds, and they're historic buildings and historic structures, we've had some claims.
Chris, does anyone from Endurus ever come out and look at the property from an underwriting perspective?
Yeah, but every other year, David, they'll come out. Joe will come out himself. I will tell you that, there are 2 things I don't like talking about: insurance and going to the dentist. I love my dentist, and I have really enjoyed working with Endurus because when I need something, they are there. Cindy, Joe, and especially with claims, they didn't mess around. When we got broken into twice now in 3.5, 4 years, they stole all our tools. They were on it. They even hired a subcontractor to come in, make sure we had a full list. We got fully reimbursed for everything. They have been amazing to work with. So, not that I'm not going to keep looking for a better rate, but
During those visits, do they point out anything that might be helpful in reducing premiums?
you know, what they do, David, is they have us go through our assets because it's a pool, right? So we talk about our assets. Okay, let's take a look at these light poles now. Let's take a look at your truck, your tractor. What are things that if you were to lose, you want covered? So they don't really go out and say, here's how you save, because it's a pool.
Right,
You've got $25 million. We don't have $25 million worth of the assets. So we're basically trying to list everything we can that if it was a loss, it would be covered. Unfortunately, we have a lot of losses. So, yeah, good
Okay.
question.
well, that, again, that's one of those things that if that's maintained at the $100,000 level, that becomes a very serious budgeting problem with $400,000 in labor.
Yes, it does. And those claims that will be older than 5 years next year, as you heard from Joe, they will be dropped off. They
Right.
will not be included, and we can see our risk assessment change as long as there's no other claims between now and then.
So what's our deductible now?
It's $1,000.
$2,000? 1,000.
Yeah, it's $1,000. So when they paid out the 50 grand of Forrest Rambo, it was $1,000 to us.
30.
Whenever we had our tools, almost $6,000, they gave us a check for 5,000, deducted the 1,000. Water line, 48,000 minus the 1,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts in this regard?
Did I understand that? I mean, the bulk of those insurance claims revolved around that $50,000. That was the biggest claim. That drops off in 5 years.
Yes. Yeah. The Forrest Rambo. Yes, exactly. Commissioner Callahan. Yeah.
I
Excellent.
thought that was 30,000.
Well, if you look at what was
50, yeah.
actually paid out and billed, it was 90,000, I believe. If you look at the far right number.
We did
Okay,
not write a
Crazy.
check. We did not write a check to him for 90,000.
No, I know that, but I'm telling you what the liability to them was. Just something to look at when you have some time.
I'm just wanting to be technically correct because
Yes.
that number gets out in the paper and it's yeah.
Well,
so eight
Yeah,
point,
at any rate, that all drops off because it's beyond 5 years, right?
well, that's what he told me.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Yeah. Yeah. He wrote that in the email, so we'll hold him to it.
8.4 is a short discussion regarding the gentleman that wants access to the wharf again,
Mhm.
who directed his comments and questions to the commissioners.
Correct. I have a recommended course of action, actually. First of all, Chris made a determination already. that
Not with
this
him,
particular-
just with
Huh?
staff. Not with him, just with staff.
According to this memo, he appealed this to you when it first happened, and you denied it.
That's right.
All right, so what he's doing now is he's coming back to the board saying, you know, I want this reviewed and I'm willing to do this and I'm willing to do that. In my view, since the letter is addressed to the board and additionally, you have already ruled on this once, I think it would be a lot administratively correct if the board took this letter and then directed you and Danielle to make a recommendation to us as to what we should do. And based on that recommendation, then we can review the facts and decide whether or not we're going to go along with it or not, you know. But generally, that's the way I think it should be handled.
Okay. May I comment on that?
Sure.
I think the first part, you were right on cue. You answered them and say, we are going to direct this to the executive director and the current wharf manager, and they will respond to you within so many days. And then it is our decision. I'm the one who was with him. I was there. I witnessed it. It's on video. And at that time, I turned him down. And he was not surprised when he came in my office. And I looked him in the eyes and said, it's been 6 years. The letter was beautifully written. He's apologized. He's atoned. He's admitted, because he did not admit back then what he did wrong. Now he's admitting it. So I discussed it with Danielle, who was not there at the time. But we all feel, and I got feedback from Commissioner Mishasek, that we would like to eliminate the no trespass and bring him back. So my suggestion is that, I think you had the first part of that right, is that, hey, we've received your email and your request. We are consulting with our executive director, and he and his staff will get back to you within a certain amount of time frame. And then whatever feedback you guys have, you give to us. It was like Commissioner Mishasek was like, you know what? He atoned. The letter was a good letter. Hey, he doesn't look like a threat. He knows what he did wrong. I'm okay with it. And that was very helpful.
I basically accept what you say, except for the last part. And that is, when it comes to us, we write a letter to him and say, this is what, we consulted with our executive director and Danielle, and this is what we find. We were the ones that he made the appeal to. And I don't think it's proper to turn around and say, look, the executive director will respond to this. He gave it to us. That's my
Okay,
opinion.
so with that, you're setting a precedent for everyone who did not get a good decision to go over the executive director's head, when it's the executive director who is responsible for making those decisions on behalf of the board.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Without a doubt.
So there, I think there's a way, John, that we could acknowledge you received the letter, you could acknowledge you received it, and that we stick with the proper procedure of putting this decision in the hands where it should be. That's the executive director.
I think the proper procedure is that it's supposed to be in the hands of the board. That's my opinion.
All right. Well, I appreciate your opinion. For the record, I'll stop talking. I completely disagree. Because this is where we need to stay in our own lane.
You feel what is the decision of the board, John?
You talking about me, John? Which
Yes.
John?
Yeah. That John.
Commissioner Callahan.
Yeah, my
You just said it was the
recommendation
decision
is
of the board.
that on the record, we ask for a recommendation from Chris and Danielle as to what they want done. When they give us that recommendation, then we write the guy a letter and say, this is what's going to happen.
Signed by the president of the commission.
That would be perfect. Yeah. I mean, look,
No.
Well,
So
I would disagree as well, because if in fact it is Chris's job, certainly it's our job to respond to a letter from the person, but the response that I would give would be that the responsibility of running the wharf is our executive director's responsibility, and his decision will be the decision that is upheld.
so let me ask you this, just as a matter of, I can't think of the word right now, but does that mean that regardless of whatever decision Chris makes regarding anything, nobody can come to the board and get something resolved? Because that's the precedent you're setting.
That's not true. I think what the executive director for the Port of Coupeville has a responsibility to make decisions and run the business at his or her level. The
And
board has a response.
No, go ahead.
What's that?
Go ahead.
But I will tell you, I take your opinions and your feedback extremely seriously. And I was at first, because I remember this, I can picture him sitting across from my desk, doing one of these, leaning over the desk, coming at me. And I am not one to back down. I have thick skin and long teeth when I'm challenged like that. This guy had no remorse. And he almost knocked an old lady off the dock. This lady could barely walk as it was, getting off a boat, and she almost got tossed off the dock. So you guys weren't there and I was,
I'm
but,
not.
and even though
I'm
I was
not-
on the fence, I got great feedback from Commissioner Mashasek. I got great feedback from my staff. And I'm like, okay, they're right. You know, just I need to take a deep breath. That's the past. I've read his letter 3 times. Once sitting in front of a general store when I came out camping. I thought, wow, okay, he's really learned from his past. So I take your feedback extremely seriously. And sometimes I have pivoted 180 because of it. So your feedback
think-
is important.
Yeah, nobody
So-
is suggesting you're doing the wrong thing. All I'm suggesting is that if people have a problem with something that you or anybody else has done in the Port of Coupeville and you don't get it resolved, if they come to the board, we're not supposed to turn around and give it back to the same people that they think is the problem. It's just a matter of form. What we're saying basically is you write us a letter, say what you want to do, and we bless it and then send it to the guy. That way we're in the loop.
Well, I would keep you in the loop anyways. Go ahead, John Mashasek. Go ahead.
Well, we're sort of chasing our tail a little bit because I understand what John Callahan's saying. I understand what Chris is saying. So perhaps, the real way to handle this is that situations like where somebody writes all 3 of us, then all 3 of us can have a discussion, come up with something that we think is appropriate to ask Chris to include in his response to the person. So if they write us, Chris, we're obviously going to, think about a response or how we would like it handled. You heard from me, my read on it. I wasn't there. The language in his letter made it sound contrite. He learned a lesson. I also felt that we were now punishing Front Street merchants because he wasn't coming over and spending money. That, is more than just the port or port staff involved. Now, merchants in Front Street were being punished by him not being able to come over and spend money. Plus, we still have the ultimate, if he screws up again, out of here, right? So I said, 6 years is enough, was my read on it. It sounded like he was a complete jerk. He acknowledged he was a complete jerk. So,
Have you responded to him, Chris, yet?
No, I wanted to have this.
Okay,
No, I have not responded to him yet, to answer your question.
okay.
No.
So,
But my plan was to respond to him and say, thank you for reaching out to the board. I have received feedback from the board. And after reviewing the case, reviewing your letter, we are going to reinstate your ability to visit the Coupeville Wharf. And I will be calling the sheriff to lift the no trespass and then reiterating any type of behavior or rules that are broken will be met with now a permanent blah, blah, blah. That was my plan.
so I find that to be highly adequate. That you've discussed it with the board. The board has recognized that they've received the letter. The board has discussed it with you.
Mhm.
All of us have put in our 3.5 cents. And upon the discussion, you're reinstated.
Yep, that was the plan.
I think that
understand?
letter would be fine.
What's that? I'm sorry.
I said, I think that letter would be fine because it
Cool.
says that you went to the board discussed it. And then we went back to you and based on what your recommendation was, write them a letter. That's fine.
Yeah, cool.
Because people are going to write us,
Sure.
they're going to try to do an end run around Chris,
And
and-
that's okay. I encourage people to talk to you guys. That's what your job, part of your job is, right? Is to listen.
Yep.
But not to make decisions for the executive director on an executive director level. Now, Commissioner Callahan made a point that I want to agree with. If I'm not getting something done and I'm not doing my job and someone goes to you guys, absolutely, you guys should address it. You should come to me and say, hey, I'm getting feedback. You're not doing your job. So I agree with Commissioner Callahan on
I agree with Commissioner Callahan too.
that.
I think we're all in
Wait a
agreement.
minute.
You're not used to that.
The question, look, the question is, you know, basic fairness and public perception. And I think the public needs to know that if there's something wrong and it doesn't get handled by the administration, the executive director, that they can get to the board and
Mhm.
expect some kind of reaction. If
Yep.
everything is going to get channeled through the executive director, it could very easily get stopped there and not reach the board.
Mhm.
That's why you have, you know, checks and balances.
That's
right.
our job. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
If a constituent came up to me and said, anybody that works for the port was a question, I would bring it up with the commissioners and Chris. If it was just Chris, I would bring it up with the commissioners.
Yep. And
So
the reason
we're
I
all
bring
on
up
the same
these issues-
page.
Yeah, and the reason I
Yeah.
bring up these issues like the Airbnb is I want to bring up these issues and let you know about them before they, or if they ever surface, excuse me. So I want you guys to be informed. I'm not trying to hide anything. I want you to know what's going on because I want you to know what we're dealing with. So
Well, and
believe me,
I don't think that decision is completely yours either, Chris. I think that's a policy question about whether or not the port should have that kind of operation happening at our property.
right. Though the town of Coupeville ruled on it and said no,
Right.
but I still brought it to you in the sense that, hey, they ruled no, the staff says no, but this is something you should know existed. So anyway, I don't want to go in a circle too. I'm happy where this landed.
Anyway,
Yeah.
have we decided on a cause of action here? Course of action?
Yes, I'm going to write a letter, as I stated earlier, to him and let him know that he's been reinstated.
For the record, I would suggest that you draft a letter to him and send it to us and get a response back from each of us saying, we approve.
Yeah, I
Actually,
would-
that's considered polling.
Yeah, got to be careful
So
with that.
it would really be better handled by a motion and a second, John.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well,
I move.
what are we
that
voting
the-
on? Because it's executive. Again, now we're back to the same debate.
I
Right.
move, I move rather that the executive director be directed to respond to this particular person on behalf of the board, saying that we agree with the executive officers, the executive director's recommendation, and the person being reinstated.
My only issue with that is I don't want that to be the board's decision to reinstate. It's the ED's decision to reinstate with the board's feedback.
Right, I would ask that you just CC us on the email.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I will.
And if we have a question at that point, we can bring it up at another meeting and say whether or not we agreed with your response. But
Agreed.
I think we beat this horse enough at this point as well, in an effort to expedite our meetings.
Yes. I've got a ferry to catch, to be quite honest with you, so
So
I would appreciate that.
we are now through the new business. We're to number 9, policies and administration. I believe it's 9.1 is a draft resolution number 300 regarding an ethics policy.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and bring that up now, please.
Hey,
Okay. You all see that okay?
so
Will
Do we
will
wanna-
the actual code of ethics be an addendum to this resolution?
It is, I think.
It is. I made it as Exhibit A as requested by Commissioner Callahan.
So typically we want a motion and a second before we get into discussion, right?
Typically, that's correct.
Commissioner Callahan?
I move that we approve the,
You actually want to move that we adopt the resolution.
I move that we adopt resolution, resolution number 300 with the, including the commissioner ethics policy.
Second. So now we can have a discussion.
Discussion on the motion, please.
Second, I gave a second.
Yes, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
So Commissioner Callahan, section 3.3 and 3.4 of the whatever this called. What's this called? This is called the actual commissioner ethics policy.
Correct.
Wait a minute. That's different than what I'm looking at. How can we have multiple 3.3, 3.4s
Yeah.
on this?
There's a
which
numbering issue there.
which section are you under, John?
Go to 3. There's 3.3, 3.4, 3.3, 3.4. I believe
Oh.
that should read 3.5 and 3.6.
Got it.
Yeah, the numbering needs to change there.
Well,
Sorry, Commissioner Callahan.
Okay,
I
so-
copied and pasted.
my concern was the second 3.3 and 3.4 with asking where are these sections referred to elsewhere in this document? How are they, how are they used or referenced within the document as a whole? Can someone-
Yeah, go ahead. It talks about, let's see.
and let me, John, let me explain where I'm coming from.
Yeah, please.
Meg and I are in a position in our life that we're trying to spend down and actually get rid of money. And so we're actually, I've personally helped financially some of the people listed here. And I acknowledge that it's nothing to do with the port, but I don't want to get in trouble with the policy during that whole process, because this is like got everybody, I'm not sure if first and second cousins are listed. But we got nieces and nephews, and yeah, we do have cousins. First cousin, second cousin, third cousins. I mean, pipes.
This refers to, John, this refers to doing business with these people on behalf of the Port of Coupeville. Has nothing to do with you gifting money to your, people in your family and stuff.
But if they turn around and do something that's involving the port, this is where, to me, it gets a little fuzzy. That's why I'm asking, how does this language incorporate with other parts of this ethics thing? Where are these sections referenced throughout the entire document? Where else does it say you stepped over the line? Does that make sense, guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to know how those definitions are being used.
Yeah,
Look at
where,
item six
Where
point
in the
three.
document are those, where in the document are those definitions?
Look at item number 6.3.
thank you. Okay. Ah, there we go. Look up a little bit, Chris. I want to see the verbiage just before that. Items not considered gifts. All items are excluded from the definition of gift. So how would I know whether or not my cousin's got a gift or not? You know,
Did Seth review this one? I have no idea. Did he review it?
Yeah, this stuff was in the original one that we gave him.
Oh, okay, cool.
Look, this is taken from the Port of Seattle, Port of Bellingham, Port of Vancouver. And I can't think of a situation, John, that you're presenting here that is in opposite to these definitions. Okay, so you wanted to know whether or not the definition of immediate family, et cetera, was there. So that's where it's referenced. What situation do you think is going to occur with your cousin?
well, not so much a cousin, but say, you know, an in-law would want to be involved with a tenant. Do I need to recuse myself at that point from any decision that might impact a tenant? It's so broad, relative wise, with the relatives.
Yeah,
That just
if you have an interest in that contract, if you're one of the deciding officials, then you do have to recuse yourself.
does that say that in the document?
Look at 6.5.
6.5, okay.
I remember reading this paragraph before when William Bell's partner wanted to lease space here. Remember that,
Right.
John?
Yep. Yeah, at the Greenbank Farm.
Yep.
Or a toy store.
Yep. And I went through this 1% shareholder sentence when we were looking at doing business with Ziply. I had to ask you guys if you had any stocks or bonds or anything that had to do with Ziply. So this is all covered under RCWs.
Yeah, John, just, until you come up with an actual fact situation, it's just kind of, what do you call it when somebody comes up with a hypothetical?
Hypothetical.
And then you take that hypothetical, and then you'd have to go into this regulation, not regulation, this code of conduct, and see what the result is. The whole thing here is designed so that you as a commissioner are not going to be making decisions on behalf of the Port of Coupeville for the benefit of you or your family, or spouse or whatever. You're supposed to be making
extended
free from that.
family.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, if there is a problem, by the way, if there's any problem at all, when the matter comes up, you are free to request advice, we have that in the last paragraph here, from counsel to determine what it is that you should do.
Okay. So here's another thing. So I just explained earlier about how we're trying to, spend down, hand off money. I'm concerned about where some of that money may end up.
Well, John, if you gave money to an immediate family and you had a concern that it was going to end up in the wrong place or somehow affect the Port of Coupeville, at that point, I think you ought to be, you ought to be talking to Seth and asking him for his advice.
Okay.
I mean, we can't possibly cover every conceivable situation that you might come up with in this ethics policy. It's a policy. And when you get down to specifics, if it's not addressed, then you really should look for, you should look for advice.
Okay.
Ahead of time.
So heads up. I mean, I think I want to vote in favor of this motion. I just want to make sure, because of the long laundry list of relatives and in-laws, I'm just worried that at some point that money is going to end up involved with a port tenant. Then what do I do?
Whatever the specific situation
Let us
is,
know that that's the
if you have a
case.
concern,
And is the port going to pay for me to talk to Seth?
as a port commissioner, I would say yes, if it's an ethics problem. If it can't be answered by, the commissioner or the executive director, then you would go to Seth. Yeah.
Okay. David, that's your understanding?
Well, I would like a little more clarification on what you think might be the problem, but if it's something.
I don't need you interpreting right or wrong of this contract, of this agreement.
Well, you asked me a question.
And that's my, I asked you what you think. And your first words were, I'm cutting you down to say, I'm cutting you off. I don't care what you think. I care what the attorney thinks. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Based
I
on
think we either ought to-
how broad.
I think we've batted this around for enough time to either want it or not want it. If we want it, then we should approve it. If we don't want it, we should not approve it, because we can talk about infinity about possibilities, like if my girlfriend decided she wanted to open a photographic studio at the Greenbank farm, I'm more concerned actually about relatives being contractors than being customers. So, the truth is, I think all this stuff is covered by RCWs. I think if you want to put a policy in writing that, somebody's going to look at one time and say, so be it, then so be it. There's no policing action involved in this. There's nothing that says what happens if somebody violates it. And so it is what it is. It's a bunch of words that say we should be good people. And if we're not good people already, this isn't going to make a difference.
Like I said, I think I'm willing and able and ready to vote in favor of it. I'm just, some of the things I brought up here, you know, is a port going to pay for me to talk to Seth to get an interpretation? Or any of us, would the port pay for any of us when we want a clarification? Is a port going to pay for that?
I would suggest, John, that's covered in paragraph 7.
So to
Chris?
answer your question, Commissioner Shasek, the answer is yes. It's port business. It's covered under a port ethics policy, resolution 300, yes.
Okay.
You could call Seth and get clarification to make sure you're in compliance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm ready to vote.
Any other?
Yeah, I would like to, I don't know if I need to amend this or not. We have the numbering problem in section 3,
Oops.
where we go 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next one should be 3, 5, and 6.
3, 6.
Can you fix
Yeah,
that?
and what you can do is just make your motion. You can read this part. Just read this part right here, John. Port of Coupeville Resolution 300, a resolution on the port. This is your motion here. And just
Right.
say, after staff has renumbered and has renumbered 2 sections, because section 6 is the same way. Let me show you really quick so you know what I'm talking about. Or it's 5. Comes down to 511, used to be 5.12.
Oops.
Everything else is pretty good.
Okay. And I do, if you look at section 3.5 where it says gift. See that
Okay.
section?
Yep.
See the first reference, 6.2? That should be 6.3. Yeah,
Okay, I can't change this because it's not in Word. Commissioner Callahan, could you, when you guys approve this or vote on it, would you please make the corrections and just send them my way?
I will do that.
Because I'm unfamiliar with this.
All right, so
Yeah.
what is the motion I should make, Chris?
Go ahead and just read.
I've already made a motion.
That's right, I've already made the motion.
Okay.
Have a
So
motion
do I
on the
need to
table.
amend the motion such to make
Could
it correct?
somebody read back the motion, please?
I would just read this motion. You're making a motion to approve resolution 300, a resolution of the Port of Commission. I'd read this with the stipulations that the numbering in the paragraphs in sections 3
Okay.
and 5 be amended,
Uh,
corrected.
So basically, it would be withdrawing the original motion, making a new motion with that added language about correcting the numbering,
Okay,
right?
I move that my original motion be withdrawn.
Super.
Second.
Okay. Understand. Now
All in
now
favor?
make the motion.
Right. Did we vote?
Yes, if you make a motion, we have to vote.
Okay, I move.
Motion has been made and seconded to withdraw your motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I move that resolution number 300, a resolution of the Port Commission of the Port of Coupeville, Island County, Washington, establishing a code of ethics for port commissioners be adopted with the proviso that the numbering in section 3 be corrected, as well as the numbering in section 5.
5. Or was
Perfect.
that other
So I have a point of wonder.
second?
Are we adopting a resolution and approving? We're doing this all in one thing, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Adopting a resolution and approving a code of ethics. And I'm wondering if we should do it in 2 different steps.
It's the same. You're adopting the resolution, which is the code of ethics.
Okay,
Yep.
Yeah.
so if anything in the code of ethics gets changed, then the resolution has to be changed. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So you guys would then have to vote on resolution 300.A and then discontinue resolution 300. It's exactly right.
Okay,
We do that with our employee manual when we have to update it.
okay.
Okay.
So a motion's been made and seconded to adopt resolution 300 with the appropriate changes to the
Numbering.
numbers within the document. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
That's painful.
Now we're looking at 8.2, adoption of employee exit interview policy. And I don't know who brought this up.
9.2.
Yeah,
9.2.
Pardon me.
Okay. It
That's
was the
Commissioner
exit
Callahan that
interview.
brought that up. Let me go ahead and get this up here.
I don't know who's leading this conversation.
Commissioner
Oh,
Callahan.
I made the suggestion, yeah. The exit interview is a method whereby as people leave the port, we can get information from them as to what their likes were, what they might have suggestions for in terms of improvements. And with that information, we can, or Chris can make whatever adjustments he wants to make on for policies and stuff. I've used this exit interview previously. It is really simple. You get stuff from people that fill it out when you ask, how would you like most about your job? You'll get stuff like it was a chance to affect things positively and do something good for the community. What did you like least about your job at the Port of Coupeville? Might be something I thought that the pay was too low, or I didn't get enough responsibility, that kind of stuff. How can we improve?
What if the answer to that question was I didn't like the executive director? Then who reviews it?
Well, that's if you look at the bottom.
It's to the commission.
Commission, yeah.
You're talking
It's
to the
commission
commissioners.
again. So it would be, it's not just for Chris to figure out what he wants to do in the way he's managing stuff, but it's an opportunity for people that's leaving the organization that they want to bring something to our attention. They have the opportunity to do it.
So is this done by email or how's this done?
You could do it by email. I would suggest that the exit interview would be in person with Chris.
Mhm.
Either that, or you send them the interview and have them return it.
I think that second way would be more appropriate, right? Because if somebody's being staring across a desk at Chris, they might
Right.
fear for their life. No,
No.
no,
I will tell you this.
it would be at a bar.
Yeah. I think you're right, John. I think it is more appropriate to just have them fill it out by email. We get a copy.
And unfortunately, some of them may not have email, potentially, So in that case, in a hard copy with a return envelope might be necessary, right?
Yeah.
So I like that we're doing this, number one. because we're getting information that we need to hear. And it's going to be, it may not have anything to do with Chris. It may be money. It may be money. It may be the, job requirements, Boy, we've gone through a lot of executive assistants. It's been interesting along the way to know what was really going on with them, about why they got hired, number one. Some of them back in Forrest Rambo days, Chris.
Okay, I was gonna say, not in my day. I have a
No.
2 years of
back-
target and selection training.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, I hear you there. So
So
just to let you guys know, these are excellent tools in large companies
right.
where management is separated from staff and from, I know pretty much all the reasons why everyone has left since I've been here intimately, because we work very close together. I know why Narissa left. She shared things with me on a personal level with her and her situation that I had no idea was going on, but I knew something was going on. So I have a very good idea. I try not to share those with the board because I try to stay in my lane, right? I've also said to staff, and I encourage it, if there are any issues between myself and my team that are not good, or they're negative, or they're not being resolved, you go to the board and you go to the board president. You go to David Day, Commissioner Day, and say, look, I've got an issue with Chris. We can't work it out. I need to bring this to the board. And I 100% support that. So this isn't for me. This would be for you guys. It isn't for me. I know what's going on with my staff because I work with them every single day. I know the problems. They know my challenges. We don't hide from each other. We are all we have in what we're trying to do. So I have mixed feelings. I know the importance of this because I want to know when they leave too. And it's mainly pay, not with it was pay with Narissa and some other things that happened. So
I would like to, I think it's a really good idea. I would like to know the logistics of it, how they receive it, when they receive it, how it I think it should be directed to the president of the board, whoever that might be at any given year, for the president to share with the other commissioners. So I would like to understand how the logistics of it would work. If it's something if it's a piece of paper that's handed to them with their last paycheck, which we don't hand out anymore either, whether it's something that, like, how do they get it? When do they get it? And how do we get it back?
well, typically what would happen is if when someone comes up, because no one's come up to me and said, I hate this place, I'm out of here. Nobody. It's been, Chris, I'm so sorry, I got to talk to you. And they felt really bad, and we sat down and we talked. So if I'm going to formalize this, then I'm going to pull out this sheet, which I could probably answer all these questions for them already, but I will go through the formality of having them fill it out. And you'll notice that a lot of them that give a 2-week, they include you in it because I've asked them to include you in it, like Narissa. Included. It's been a pleasure working here, blah, blah, blah. So if this is something that the board is interested in, again, I'm going to pick my battles here. I don't agree that this is the board's realm. And now if someone complains about the executive director, dang right. But I'll pick my battles. If you want me to formalize what I do already, then I'll do it. You want me to share it with you guys? So be it.
So
I'll
Chris,
share it with you. Yeah.
does this also document whether or not they can collect unemployment?
Well, that's when it comes to unemployment, like Narissa, she had reasons why she had to leave. And she quit, right? Same thing with Kate. Her husband's moving to Florida, he's in the service. Kelly retired, right? They left. I have not fired anybody since the early days when I rebuilt and got the house in order. So they all quit. They don't get workman's comp or whatever it is, because
try.
they quit.
But
Yeah,
they can try.
Well, they don't, because I would know about it. Like I get notified when anything happens with Eleanor, anything.
Mhm.
You know, Danielle files for extended family medical leave. I know about it. So
I
We
would
have-
suggest, that we go ahead and formalize this to the extent that when the person is leaving, they be handed the piece of paper and say, here's an exit interview. We'd appreciate it if you'd, send it out and give them a self-addressed envelope to the president of the board and let them either submit it or not submit it.
I think that's an excellent idea.
I would actually insert the word that you need to fill this out, to have it in your record.
well, you can't force anyone to fill anything out.
You can't, it doesn't force. I'm just saying it kind of implies that they need to fill it out and let us know.
I think, John, I think if it's just voluntary, you're going to get a better response.
Okay.
So you want a motion? I move that we adopt an exit interview policy based on the form provided, which will be given to the employee upon leaving and returned to the president of the commission.
So if somebody just calls up, just on the phone says, Chris, I'm out of here, click. What now?
We send them
Well,
the form.
that's never happened. Number two,
It could
if they're
happen.
that unhappy, that would be shocking because usually when someone's unhappy, we talk about it, whether it's pressure from the community or their pay or whatever. I don't know, because I've never had that happen. It's always been, Chris, I'm sorry, but this is what I got to do. I'm like, yeah, I know, I saw it coming. So if someone said, hey, I quit, click, I would probably call them back and say, hey, is everything okay? Can we talk? I would try to find out because I'd be surprised. Or maybe I knew. But here's the deal. I have relationships with everyone that I've worked with, and they wouldn't do that to the board and do that to me. They haven't yet, except what's his name, the old facilities maintenance guy. So I don't know. I would try to call him back and, hey, would you mind filling this out? I'll email it to you and go ahead and send it back to David Day, whoever the president is.
Do we have a second to the motion?
To the president. I'm not going to be president much longer.
Right.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second it. I'll second it.
Any further discussion on this topic?
None.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Once again, a unanimous decision. Thanks. And let's see, that takes us to the second opportunity for public comment, but it doesn't look like anybody's there unless Marianne would like to speak with the board.
Nope, Mary Ann's good.
Commissioner discussion. Anyone have anything that they'd like to bring up within our group?
One question to John. We talked about earlier, we were talking about the priorities, and I had on there recycling program, and Chris mentioned that they recycle at the port. That's not what I was referring to. Didn't you have a program that you were looking at discussing having to do with recycling off island and turning garbage into other stuff?
Yep. Sierra Energy. Because all we're doing is everybody thinks we're recycling. We're not. You're just stuffing it in a trailer and hauling it off to the middle of the state to be put in a dump, and then they sell the methane off of that to Puget Sound Energy. So we buy back our stuff as opposed to doing something local.
Okay. Thank you for
So-
that clarification.
Okay.
I don't have anything at this time that I'd like to add to a discussion. Commissioner Mishacek?
Well, I did check with the auditor's office and there's two people running for your spot, David.
Yes.
And then somebody's running along with Commissioner Callahan for District 3. And I'm not up to being needing to run for office yet. So the auditor did fill me in with there's two people for each one of the other districts besides mine.
It
So-
made the paper also, just so you know.
It's also,
Yeah.
also
Is
on
that
there.
second, is that second person for the District 1, is that the lawyer guy?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Good.
Yep. God help us. We have two lawyers.
Yes. That should shorten your meetings.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah, it'll start January 1 and end up December 31st.
Did I make a mention to Commissioner Callahan? Normally, the Women of League of Women Voters has a forum for candidates to speak at, and that's I think that's very valuable for the people that attend that meeting to learn more about the candidates. So,
Thank you. And Chris, I'll send you a copy, an updated copy of the ethics thing.
Please, and I'll have that resolution sent out. Mary will probably send it out because I got to leave right after this meeting. Next week to have you guys sign it digitally
sounds
to
good.
officially be in our resolution book.
Thank you.
Oh, without
you.
objection, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 15:47. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Sounds
much.
good. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Everybody, thank you.